Hello, hi, it is me, Matt Hughes from the Me and My Mixtape, and this is an intro to the intro of our podcast mixtape, episode 10, featuring Mr. James Scarlett, the first ever guest Mark and myself have had on the podcast. Mark and myself love this chat, and before we get into it, we just wanted to sort of say a huge thank you to everyone for listening and streaming and downloading and following us on socials and all of the comments, everything that we've had, all the sharing of competitions. It's been awesome. We've totally loved it. This is the last episode of season 1. This is the final episode, but fear not. We will be returning like knights of the old on hills from yore. We will be returning incredibly quickly. Our season 2, episode 1 will be Friday, April the 11th. So it will only be a 4-week gap. It's just 4 weeks you have to wait. Can you believe that, Mark? 4 weeks.
I can't believe it, and I'm really glad that we're not like on Netflix, because we'd be cancelled. You know, like when people are like, oh, how good was season 1, and then suddenly we do an announcement like, unfortunately, Me and My Mixtape podcast has now been cancelled. We're not renewing it for season 2.
Exactly. So yes, this is just a very short message to say thank you so much for everybody who's listened and subscribed and commented. We would love some more, so please do share and like and subscribe and comment. And please do enjoy this episode, this mixtape number 10 with James Scarlett, and we will see you again on Friday the 11th of April for the start of season 2 of the Me and My Mixtape podcast. As the saying goes, 2 is company, but 3 is a crowd, which I always found to be a strange way of looking at increasing your friendship circle. Surely, we would all like more friends, and with that mindset in place, that is exactly what we've done today. Hello, and welcome everyone. We are Me and My Mixtape, the podcast that uses knowledge, wisdom, skill, and wit to create and curate the perfect musical mixtape, with the subject matter for said mixtapes changing each week. I'm your host on this audio carousel, Matt Hughes. Joining me as ever is the Brad Pitt of the podcast world, Mr. Mark Woodiot. And joining us both and you, dear listener, is Mr. James Scarlett, booker, organiser and general lord of all things 2000 Trees and Arctangent festivals. Hello, sir, and hello, sir. Hi.
Hi, that was a great intro. I love being called the General Lord, I think you said. That's nice.
I think that's what you need on your cards. That's what you need on your general just cards. You know, when people come up to you and be like, oh, hello, James, thanks for the festival. You're like, yeah, here's the card. Here's my card.
I'm in.
Done.
Or just the back print of a t-shirt, just General Lord. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could pull that off. I'd try. I'd have a go.
So welcome to Me and My Mixtape, James. Thank you very much for being on it. And I guess I just wanted to start by saying congratulations on your own podcast. Obviously, we're going to talk about your festivals and we get into the mixtape and the subject and all that. But how's it been being a podcast celebrity?
Sorry, say that again.
How's it been being a podcast celebrity?
I mean, I think I had to hear you say it again because it was a weird sentence. Just hearing the whole podcast thing is just like totally surreal for me. I can't really quite get my head around it. Gav just said to me we should do a podcast, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to do a podcast. And he's like, come on, we'll just do a podcast. And I was like, all right, we'll have a go. And now it's like people listen to it, and much like yourselves, we appear in the Spotify charts some weeks, and we're going on tour, and it's weird. It's just like a total surreal thing, which I'm really enjoying, actually. So, yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, and as we were saying just before we sort of started recording, you have an agent, and I don't know if, I'm sure a bunch of people listening to this also listen to your Two Promoters, One podcast, but you have an agent. The enemy. You have an enemy amongst your ranks.
We have not only an enemy amongst our ranks. He's the one who's probably taken the biggest amount of shit from us on the podcast. We've given him quite a severe ribbing on a number of occasions, and yeah, now he's working with us. So it's weird. It's just the whole thing's weird. We're like, it's like gone from just being a bit of fun to like, now I feel like I have to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Still fun, but I've got to be a bit more professional.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I'm a podcast newbie compared to Mr. Mark Woodyatt here, who's many years and many podcasts under his belt. How are you, Mark? Are you well?
I'm very well. I'm very busy. I realise that at Christmas everyone doesn't want to do any emails and nobody wants to talk about music and bands. And then I start the new year and my inbox is all the dream guests that I could ever ask for have just all come through in like a week. And I'm like, I've got like, this is between us and it'll probably go on the episode, but amazing bands like Better Lovers, who I just absolutely adore, who I've wanted on the podcast for absolutely ages, have just gone, yeah, we'll do it. And I'm like, LS Dunes, they've gone, yeah, we'll do it.
Amazing.
So, it's going to be a good week.
Whoa, what?
Yes.
So look, let's get into the mixtape. Do you want to talk a little bit about the subject, Mark? Do you want to reveal the subject for this episode 10, final episode of season 1's subject?
Yeah, I feel like season 1 has had a bit of everything. I feel like we've pleased everyone from all different walks of life and all different tastes of music. And I think now to kind of have our first guest, which feels like a bit of a celebration for season 1 coming to a close, we wanted to take it right back to the very start and talk about kind of our childhoods and saving up that pocket money and buying our first ever albums. So today's mixtape is songs from the first albums that you bought.
Yeah, so a brief look over the mixtape that I can see that you people that are listening can't see is that Mark and yourself, James, have gone for cool albums that you bought as cool young children, and I've gone for the really embarrassing albums that I first bought with my money or found down the back of a sofa. Was this a hard pick for you, James? Was there quite a lot of albums that kind of swirling around that are those kind of key kind of first records that you remember sort of buying as a kid or getting from your parents or whatever?
I mean, I don't think I've chosen cool albums. You've gone to the next level of uncool, maybe, but I mean, mine are.
Thanks.
There's one of mine is wildly uncool, and I try not to talk about this band that often, but I do always end up coming back to them. But no, I went for it was my honest picks. I've got a real I'm really annoyed by the music industry where everyone's like first gig was Nirvana and everyone's got their cool, and they always leave out the fact that actually we all got into music on no one starts with Nirvana. No one's like Fugazi is my first album. No, it's not. It just wasn't. So these are like my first rock albums, really. I mean, obviously, sitting in the car going on holiday with my parents, I was listening to the Beach Boys and Krista Berg and all that sort of stuff. But this is where I discovered rock music. So that's how I chose to interpret it.
Nice. And the same for you, Mark, with these like the first albums that you can remember, kind of like you said, saving your money up for getting your coupons or whatever you did in your childhood and went to get your records from your local R Prize or whatever.
Exactly that. I was looking at kind of the 8 years of these albums that are coming up I'm going to be talking about in songs, and they're kind of the early 90s, 92, 93, 94. So in kind of terms, I'm 12, so I'm thinking I'm doing a paper round. I haven't got a proper job. I'm earning probably £7 a week, and then with my pocket money, I'd go out to Our Price or even Woolworths, which was the great place to get your music back then, treat myself to a new album and fall in love and discover some of the bands that have shaped the music taste I have today. And I suppose, like James said, everyone will tell you the first band they saw was Refused in a basement at this cool venue, but I tell everyone it was Green Day. That was the first gig that I remember that got me into the music I love. But one of the first gigs I ever saw was like the Fugees and Cooler Shaker. So it wasn't this amazing, great punk band. And as far as albums goes, if I truly chose the album today that I first bought, it would be Jive Bunny. And that would just completely throw this whole mixtape off. And
no, that would have been lovely.
Or Two Unlimited.
I'm absolutely gutted. We don't have Jive Bunny in this. Well, look, we're gonna crack on, and James, as a guest, this is a 10-track mixtape divided by 3. That doesn't work, so we give our guest the opening track and the closing track of a mixtape, 2 important points in a mixtape. So, do you want to talk about your opening track, your band, and your song, and your album, and all that stuff?
Absolutely. So I chose the song "Everlone" by the Wild Hearts. I find myself, I'm like the Wild Hearts champion in the UK now. I don't shut up about the Wild Hearts basically because I feel like they were really cool in 1993 and they should have been massive. Well, mate, to be honest, as a 14-year-old, who was I to judge what was cool? I suppose in a way.
That's true. Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't able to judge. I feel like they kind of took the sort of they took a little bit of the sort of sleaziness of 80s rock and sort of updated it and mixed it with just massive riffs. So I always felt that they were like better than their American sort of competitors, like let's say the Foo Fighters. That for me, Ginger Wildheart was a better songwriter than Dave Grohl, and I realise that's like controversial in lots of places. But they had basically riffs, they had choruses, and it was the first band that I ever listened to that had like a really progressive element to them, where some of the songs would be 7 minutes long, and they'd every song ends with like some mad sort of outro crazy wig out section, but they're just pop songs as well.
Mm.
And this song Everlone basically covers all the bases. Am I going to like the Wild Arts? Well, let's go and listen to Everlone and find out if I'm gonna like them or not. I'm now trying to work out were they cool. I feel like for me, they were like the coolest band in the world at the time, but maybe not. You're probably right.
I think well, no, I'm not right. I'm being a little shit. I think we've mentioned it a few times on the podcast on this season, and I think a lot of the time what happens with British rock bands and the media is they get kind of put into like a thing, like they get Brit rock. They get tagged with something, and they're always kind of put in this like little kind of bracket, and that means that ages very quickly. And I feel like a lot of British bands do get overlooked or pushed to one side or sort of ignored after a time. And we've spoken about Three Colours Red and Hell Is for Heroes and Feeder, and there's the list of bands goes on and on and on. And I think the Wild Hearts, that was me being facetious earlier. I think the Wild Hearts are cool because they have Ginger, because he's a proper rock star.
Yeah.
Wild Hearts are a band that you were kind of into, Mark. Was that a sort of one of
I remember there was a girl I fancied at school that had like a Wild Hearts hoodie on.
I think they look like Ginger.
Probably an unofficial bootleg hoodie, but yeah. And I was a big fan of bands like I'm not going to mention some of them because they're coming up, but China Drum and Curb Dog and Three Colours Red. So it really fitted within that kind of genre. And when I listened to Wild Hearts, instantly I realised that they were just this force of a band that should be bigger than they were. And even though they've got this legacy and they're still going now, and Ginger does solo shows all over the country and they've got this fan base, they're still never really got that kind of golden moment. They never had that headline festival. They never had that huge slot. And even bands like Levellers that were on the circuit at the same time seem to always overshadow them. And I always think, whenever I meet someone that likes the Wild Hearts, they absolutely adore them. They own everything they've ever played. They will always fight for them. You never meet anyone that's just like, yeah, they're all right. You either love them or you don't like them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like if you're in, you're in, and you're properly there. I mean, I'm just like the whole of the Brit Rock thing is, I just loved it. I mean, someone wrote on our Two Promoters One Pod sort of Facebook group the other day that there's some like academic theory about people always say that their favorite year for music was when they were 15. So there's something that's going on when you're 15. And I was just turning 15 in 1993. So when this album came out, and there's something going on where you're just like, you're at the perfect age to suck in new music and then convince yourself for the rest of time that it's the best thing ever. But as we'll come on to later on with not just my choices, some of your choices, it is that it is the best time, the mid 90s.
Yeah, definitely. It's a difficult balancing act, isn't it? And obviously, with your kind of festival booker hat on, it is always about trying to look forward, trying to find the new kind of young talent, trying to bring people through, and not always kind of like look back and think of live in this kind of nostalgia kind of bubble. But the 90s were pretty good for music. As listeners have heard on multiple of Mark and my podcasts over the last couple of months. So
I very
what?
much enjoyed your 1995 podcast. It was great. Am I correct in thinking you did? No one said "Out Come the Wolves" by Rancid. Did that feature?
Nobody sent it.
No.
Well, that is a scandal. I just wanted to bring it up here.
Well, what we did is we
Yeah.
knew you were going to talk about it, so we didn't, knowing that we could
True.
then talk about it on episode 10. Keep the listeners waiting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I like it.
True. So what album was this from, James?
First is the Wild Hearts,
And that came out in
1993.
93. Yeah, those. Yeah, so
And actually,
91.
I mean,
90, yeah.
for a mixtape podcast, it's probably quite relevant for me to bring up that the first time I ever heard this album, my friend had, it's not quite a mixtape, but they had taped me a cassette, and it had this on one side, and I think Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction on the other side. And they'd
Wow.
like, you know how people back in the day with the mixtapes, they'd filled in every track on the back of the tape. So yeah, that was the first time. And as soon as I got it, as soon as I heard it, I then went out and bought it. Brilliant.
Nice. I used to do that thing with tapes, where you could break the little plastic bit off. So I'd make a mixtape for somebody and I'd kind of give it to them. And the little facetious little twat that I would then break the little plastic bit so they couldn't record over it. So they'd have to have that mixtape for the rest of their lives. You're not recording over this. You're not getting a free tape.
Thank God for sellotape and then covering it over and being like,
I know.
Matt, his choices are terrible.
Yeah, I'm going to record Whitney Houston's Bodyguard soundtrack. Cracking opening track. I have never listened to this album before. You put this on the mixtape, and I listened to the track and I've listened to the record, and it's really good. I think they should come to 2000 Trees and play the album in full.
I completely agree. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
That would be lovely. Right, we're now going to go to Mark and your first choice, which is another Brit rock banger.
I think it doesn't need a massive introduction because it was one of the albums of the 90s, and it's still celebrated now with the 30th anniversary tour only, I think, last year, and it is the incredible Therapy with the unbelievable anthem Scream Major from the masterpiece of an album, Trouble Gun, which was really difficult to pick one track off because I think every song on there should be a single. It was at the point where I was like, Nowhere is the song I remember from being that age and singing along and thinking that, I was invincible and it was the greatest song ever. But as soon as I hear Scream Major with that and that riff, I'm like, the hairs on my neck stick up. I get excited. It takes me right back to those days. Everything about that album, just the album cover with the guy with his head in a bin and it just being so iconic on a t-shirt. I saw him about 2 years after this at Wolverhampton. They came on, and even now I've had them on the Mark and Me podcast. They're the nicest people in the industry. They've had lineup changes, but they are as good today as they were 30 years ago. And I just think there is no way I could leave this band or this album off this playlist. If there's one choice that was going to make it, this was the easiest choice I was ever going to make.
Nice. Yeah, wonderful band, wonderful Northern Irish band. So this track was originally on their Short Sharp Shock EP, and then on Trouble Gum, and produced by Chris Sheldon, who's gone on to produce Foo Fighters, Biffy, Ocean Size, a bunch of amazing bands. You're a fan, right, James? I mean, obviously, it feels completely churlish to even ask, but Therapy, quite a good band.
Yeah, so if I was going to list the Brit rock bands, it would probably be Therapy in the number 2 spot. And this album was so important to me. So
Yeah.
so I can remember being in my girlfriend's dad's car when I was 14 and it being on the radio, this song. And you're right, Matt, it was on the Short Sharp Shock EP before Trouble Gum came out, and I couldn't find that EP anywhere. And it's way pre-internet. It's not that easy. And I ended up buying the album Nurse instead, which was quite a shock to my 14-year-old brain because the album before is, well, it's raw and quite
Very
hard to get
different.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different. They definitely sort of polished some edges before they released this, but this, I mean, this album was so important, and it was almost it pushed me towards metal in a way because it is much heavier than all the rest of the Brit rock, and there is definitely, I mean, the first song like takes your face off, and it's like it's heavy and it's angry, and you know, there's definitely metallic elements to it. So
Definitely.
yeah, very important album for me.
Yeah, and really interesting lyrically as well, and very cool, very direct. I think this of all the Brit rock bands of that sort of early 90s, 93, 94 sort of period, Therapy, for my sort of circle of friends, they were a band that were embraced, which isn't most of my circle of friends kind of went for American bands, but Therapy, they were just very, very cool. You know, they had amazing t-shirts. I had a t-shirt that said "fuck Woodstock" on it, which I just thought was really cool. You know, they had songs about, you know, someone's sister's fucking James Joyce's fucking your sister. I just thought they were very, very cool, and it was always very kind of image led with the kind of the Andy Cairns lyrics. Yeah, wonderful band, really awesome pick. Love this record, Troublegum. Holy shit. Yeah, I think if I was going, go on, sorry.
It was a bit of a shame that they chose to do a really artistic anti-commercial thing after this. I feel like if they'd released Troublegum Part 2, they probably would have been huge. But they released an absolutely incredible album, and I think the year later, called Infernal Love, and it's amazing, but it is weird, really weird, and anyone who was there for the sort of 3 minute pop, heavy pop songs that they were doing on Troublegum had got a bit confused by that. So they kind of, much like the Wild Arts, they kind of torpedoed their career, but just in a different way.
Yeah, and I feel there's like, I adore them, and I saw them a couple of years ago in Nottingham at the Rescue Rooms, I think it was, and it was really packed and really hot, and it took me back to those early days at Rock City and stuff. But I feel like, and I mean this with full respect to them because I adore them, they're really only known for Troublegum, and I'm not saying that in any disrespect to them, but everyone was just waiting to hear Nowhere, or was waiting to hear Scream Edge. You could see people, and they obviously finished with it, and there was like a different vibe when those tracks were played from this album. The place was like on fire. It's like lit up, and everything else was just kind of not ever had that kind of same heights. So I feel like what you're saying there, they kind of didn't go downhill, but they never ever got close to touching distance, did they, from that legacy they left with that album?
No, no, and even actually they went a step further when they released a couple of albums later. They probably went completely anti-commercial, and it was like their noise rock album, which I think is brilliant. But again, it's just like alienated a load of people. So I followed Therapy their whole career, and they've got millions of good albums, but nothing that touches this in the way that nothing does it as good as this album. Brilliant.
Yeah.
I feel like there's pressure on you now, Matt, because me and James have got quite a similar start to this. There's quite a similar vibe. Bands that have not stayed to their heights of legacy. I have no idea what you're going to spring on us.
So you guys have gone for a Brit rock 90s double A-side, and I've decided to go with a record that came out in 1981. And that is an artist called Rick Springfield, and the song is called Love Is Alright Tonight from the album Working Class Dog. Now, are either of you even aware of Rick Springfield? You ever even heard of Rick Springfield before this?
No.
Huge fan, got everything they've ever made, t-shirts, hoodies.
Right, so this
never,
album...
But I do like the album cover. The album cover of a dog wearing a shirt wins it for me, but yeah, I've never heard of him.
So this album was something that I went into like a secondhand record shop, and was trying to buy an album. I think my dad had played Bruce Springsteen in the car, and I was like, this is this is awesome. I'm going to get me some Bruce Springsteen. And I went in and picked up Rick Springfield, thinking it was Bruce Springsteen because I was, young and could barely. So I thought I was buying a Springsteen record, and I came back and I put it on. I was like, this doesn't sound like Bruce Springsteen. But then this song opens the record, and it is like, I think it's a masterclass in very simple pop rock, huge choruses, beautifully played guitar work, amazing layered harmonies. Definitely feels like a 70s record rather than an 80s record. But this album is kind of slightly more famous because it has Jesse's Girl, which was in the film has completely escaped my mind, where Mark Wahlberg is a porn star.
Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights. Yes, it was Jesse's Girl. It's from Boogie Nights. And I just have such a soft spot for this record. And I think it is officially the first record I ever I think I spent £2.50 on it, or £2 or whatever, in a secondhand shop, thinking it was a Springsteen album, but it's still officially the first album that I ever bought. So there.
Do you know what? It's not a bad mistake to make, because it doesn't go alongside our choices. At least you're being open and honest and saying your choice is genuinely the first album you bought, which I think me and James have slightly cheated and tried to be a bit cooler. But when I listened to it, I thought to myself, it's made for like a training montage background music. If I was in Karate Kid or Rocky, I would want to listen to this as my like getting beefed up and doing weights and having myself running up a mountain. This is the track I'd want playing.
That sounds just like a Wednesday for you, Mark.
It is. I only just got to this recording today because I was outside
chopping wood,
smashing up blocks. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, so look, I unashamedly love Rick Springfield. He was a musician, then became an American soap opera heartthrob doctor on TV in America. And then he released this record, and people kind of dismissed him. He went on to win a Grammy for Best Rock Artist of the Year. Jesse's Girl won a Grammy for the single. This album is definitely worth a moment of anyone's time. It is a certain kind of snapshot of that sort of post-punk, it moving back into sort of that 70s beautiful, over-the-top production, lots of overdubs and stuff. But yeah, it was released on February the 24th, which is my birthday. So there you go.
What I can't believe is I thought, who's this? And then I clicked 6 million listeners a month on Spotify.
Right.
And that isn't just all Matt. So that's pretty good going.
Yeah, I think most of those are probably for Jesse's Girl. Right, look, we're going to move on to, James, your second choice, and a band and an album that I've already spoken to you about before, and here we are again. Our mutual
do you
love.
know what? I've only ever spoken about this twice, and it's both times on podcasts run by you. So I honestly, this is not a story that I talk about a lot, but I quite like it. So essentially, my mate Dan, when we were at school, left his Walkman at my house, and this album was in it. And I took his Walkman back to school one day, and I was listening to it on the bus. I didn't know what I was going to hear, and I put on this song, which is Decadence Dance by the band Extreme, from the album Pornography, which is 1990. So I would have been sort of 11, 12. And this is like me pre-rock at this point. So I don't listen to rock bands, basically, unless you're going to count like Meatloaf or whatever. So although, I mean, when you said at the start of this podcast that my music choices were cool, this is not cool. This is like the opposite of cool. I mean, the album's called Pornography, for Christ's sake. I mean, I don't think you can get away with such an album title in 2025, but you could in 1990. And it's basically 80s rock, but it's like a proper guitar. Like he's like a Nuno Bettencourt is a guitarist. He's like a sort of guitar wizard who's got all the riffs and all the solos. And look, genuinely, I still listen to this album a few times a year. This is the absolute honest to God truth. I spend my time talking to people about like Cult of Luna, all these dark Arctangent festival bands. But whenever I'm feeling a bit glum, I put on Extreme. And it was so instrumental in the fact that I now listen to Cult of Luna and Opeth. Started really with the guitar riff in this song and me being like, what? You want to be like, oh yeah, I heard Nirvana's debut album and that really changed my mind. But no, I heard Extreme, but it's still amazing. I love it. It's not cool,
No,
but I love it.
no, but I think the start of a journey. God, that sounded grandiose. The beginning of your kind of musical listening kind of life, when it's not just Motown or whatever your parents have got in the car when you're driving to Tesco's or whatever. Those first records are always a little bit crossover because what I mean, like you said earlier, your first record, you're not going to go and get Rain and Blood or like whatever, and that's it. I'm a Slayer fan. I don't listen to anything. So I was very similar to you. Like I was given a copy. I think somebody said to me, "You've got to hear this song, Decadence Dance. It's amazing." And they put it on a mixtape for me, and I loved it. I totally loved it. It's so over the top. It's so bombastic. Nuno Bettencourt's guitar and production, along with Michael Wagner, is so it's so clean. It's that proper, kind of early 90s, late 80s, very, very shiny, heavy guitar rock, I guess. Although this isn't really heavy, but although Nuno's guitar is quite complex. And I think this record has some really standout songs in it. I mean, the ridiculously titled "Get the Funk Out" is a banger. And the title track is a banger, and obviously everybody knows More Than Words, which is genuinely a high point for kind of those rock ballads, that way better than Every Rose Has Its Thorn and all of that other shit. I think we said this last time. I share your uncool love for Extreme, and I think a lot of it falls onto the shoulders of Nuno Bettencourt because how brilliant he is. Was this a record for you at all, Mark, or was this sort of slightly later? Or I mean, this is 1990, so
the cover is really iconic, isn't it? With the little kind of like fat kid on the front who's got, I think, a beer in his hand or something. Like, it's very kind of Guns N' Roses era and Kiss and all those sort of bands. Yeah. And I wanted to learn guitar from a very young age, and my parents would pay for me to have guitar lessons, and I would go to basically this cool guy that just had a great record collection, and my mum would be like, you need to learn the theory and the chords and all this, and I was just like, I just want to learn songs. So I'd come back and be like, I've learnt Nirvana Polly, because it was just 4 simple power chords. And they were like, we're paying this guy to teach you guitar, but you're not learning anything, you're just coming back and learning songs. But I'm like, that's the best way I'm going to learn. So my parents were really happy when I came home and I was like, this is a chord. And it was like G. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be learning. This is why you want me to go to guitar lessons. And that then obviously became one of the most ever played guitar songs because it was More Than Words. So I was learning to play them more than just a strummed bar chord, which really pleased my family. So then I was like, I really love this song, and it is a really beautiful song. It's up there with like Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton and all these classic beautiful acoustic tracks. So my parents got me the album and I put it on and I was like, fuck, like nothing else sounds like More Than Words, does it? It completely stands alone. It's like this even sort of Dave Matthews Counting Crows kind of off track, and then everything else is really kind of grungy and alternative and rocky and distorted. So I was a bit blown away. And then obviously later on in life you mature and you evolve in your music tastes, and now I really appreciate the album. I'm like, that's cool, like it's for its time, it's for 1990, but I am not embarrassed to tell anyone that I think Extreme are a great band.
Amazing. Can you also play More Than Words on the guitar, Matt? Because I can, so that we could have a little jam at 2000 Trees this year if all 3 of us can.
Not only can I play it, I also remember listening to this record in a car and like learning the different because the vocal harmonies in More Than Words are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And I remember learning the like Nuno and
Gary
Sharon's vocal
Nice.
harmony, where they pitch themselves, because they're really, really gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Main stage at the Forest
Main
stage.
stage, Saturday night.
Trees.
We're starting a band. Lovely.
Yeah.
After Alexis on Fire, I think I don't want to warm up for them. I think after they've played, as everyone's
Sure.
leaving, they just hear, "What would you do?"
Beautiful.
I'm not doing any of the harmonies, by the way.
I think just before we move on, I think the really interesting thing with this record is it's like pre-grunge, like 1990 when it came out. It's just before the world went crazy for plaid shirts and slacker anthems and stuff. So this was almost like this was the only time really this record could have been a success. I think if it was released a year later or whatever, I think it would have just been completely lost because the world would have moved on because of Nirvana and stuff. So I think it's really interesting how this has kind of come up just before. I tried to read up about, because I remember it when it first came out, they were saying that it was a concept record. I don't really see any concept in it apart from something about childhood or lost childhood or something. And I have no idea, I don't know if you do, James, no idea what Decadence Dance is about, but it's very funky. Like, I've no idea what the song's about.
No, I have no idea at all. We used to spend hours and hours arguing about what the kid says at the start of the song, in the intro before the music starts. And we used to think he was shouting for his dog or something, but many an hour can be spent amongst teenagers trying to work out what they say. But yeah, no, I don't know what the song's about.
Yeah. Well,
it's great though.
If Gary and Nuno can let us know when, they see our new band playing at 2000 Trees murdering modern words, then maybe they can let us know. So we're going to move on to your second choice, Mark. And again, you've come with the bangers.
Yeah, I promise I've not put this in just to try and look cool, because it is again up there with Therapy as this album cover that's instantly iconic. It stands the test of time, and I'm going to say something controversial because I know, Matt, you've worked with them, but this is when Offspring used to be really, really good. Like, phenomenal. And it's the absolute anthem, Self-Esteem, from the brilliant, brilliant album Smash. And this is when MTV used to play videos, and you'd find out your favourite band, not from Spotify, not from Me and My Mixtape podcast or Two Promoters, One Podcast. You would have to go out there and watch good old-fashioned Scuzz or MTV2 or MTV. And I remember this band came on, and there was these X-rays on the video, like you could see them playing their guitars and stuff, and their bodies were kind of a bit like the Ruben album cover with the skeletons showing through.
Yeah.
And I was instantly like, this is cool. This is really awesome. And at this time, I'm listening to bands like Bush, and I felt like it fitted in really well with the Deftones era and all these great bands that were coming through, like Blink-182 and stuff. But the moment I heard it, I was like, this is the album I'm going to buy this week with my pocket money. Like, I'm getting this. And I got it. I took it home. I just loved it. I loved the cover. And as soon as I put it in, I was like, yeah, this is one of my instant favourite bands. Like, Time to Relax, Bad Habit, Come Out and Play. Every song is great. And Self-Esteem, that riff, la 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 la, it's just a simple. It's like their kind of Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's their 4 chords, instant, huge hit. They've never topped it, and I was sold. I went to see them. I got the T-shirt. I got the hoodie. I was telling everyone they were the best band. Them and Bad Religion just hit me like they changed my whole life. And I'm sorry to say it, but when they did kind of start doing the more radio friendly stuff and I don't want to use the word sellout because that's harsh, but when they were doing, you gotta keep them. What's the one that was really cheesy?
Very Fly.
That's it.
There are no cheesy Offspring songs. They're all classics.
Yes, but Pretty Fly for a white guy and all this, I was out. I was like, oh no, I'm all right now. But until that moment, they were untouchable for me.
That's a banger. Yeah, I mean, Smash is undeniably, obviously, I mean, I don't know if it still is, but for a long period of time, it was the biggest selling album on an independent label worldwide. It's pretty good. It's pretty good for a bunch of snotty kids from California. Was this a record sort of that helped infuse your 90s kind of musical journey, James, as well?
Yeah, I was all over this. I mean, as Mark said, it was very empty. I think it was pre-Scuzz and pre-MTV2 actually. So I would say it was MTV when MTV used to actually play music videos, and it was all over it. And at that period of time, 1994 and 1995 were the only years that I ever really listened to what I would describe as pop punk. And it had all the best albums because it basically had Green Day, Dookie, it had this album, it had Bad Religion, Stranger Than Fiction, Out Come the Wolves, Rancid, and NoFX, Punk in Drublic. And basically, those 5 albums I was all over. And I never really listened to pop punk after that. I haven't followed it particularly other than in my sort of role as a festival organizer, but that was just the time. And I always thought this album was like the bridge between pop punk and grunge because it's much sort of grittier and like somehow like darker or whatever. And the video that you just talked about was really it looked like it was a grunge band video, really, I thought. I loved this album and I have not listened to The Offspring. So they did chase that. I would agree with Mark. They sort of chased the commercial thing. Pretty Fly for a While Guy is a great song, but they carried on.
It's a great song.
They carried on trying to rewrite that though a little bit, and I sort of lost interest in the Offspring. And then last year at Download, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go and watch them, just see what it's like. And when they played songs from this album, it was so much fun. I know every word to every song. I sang Bad Habit at the top of my voice in that field, and it was just great. And I thought they were brilliant. So yeah, great choice.
Yeah, awesome album, awesome band. I remember at the time. So this album was 94, I think. I remember at the time it was kind of Nirvana had almost already come and gone in that short period of time, and people were already sort of looking at other things at external from grunge. And I remember a lot of people thinking, well, The Offspring are this replacement for Nirvana. They're the next band kind of along. And then obviously they did become a band very much like Nirvana that people, jocks and, people that maybe don't link or associate with these kind of lyrics of being an outsider and struggling to communicate to the world, and which is kind of what the basis of kind of grunge and kind of punk kind of were, about being an outsider, outside of kind of the norm. But I think that just comes with the fact that it was ever present, it was omnipresent, it was everywhere. I think every single person that I was at college with bought this record. I think they wanted to own it. And I think, like you, James, this then opened that door to NoFX, Rancid, Operation Ivy, Pennywise, No Use for a Name, Lagwagon, that side of things, because I was a skater as well, so that sort of whole sort of culture opened. But these guys were always the kind of kings. And then, like a teenager, you sort of sniffily move on very quickly when they get too big and you ignore them. But I thought Ixnay and the Hombre, I thought they've released lots of very good records since then. And yeah, Download, they were kind of playing when the rain stopped. Thank the brief moment the rain had actually stopped, and they had a lovely time. And yeah, it was a really, really good set, I think. So now we're going to move. Yeah. So now we're going to go for your two rock tracks to another album, which is genuinely one of the first albums I bought. So the artist is the wonderful, much missed George Michael, and I've gone with the title track Faith from his debut album Faith. Are either of you genuine George Michael fans?
Hand on heart, I thought he was one of the greatest singers of our generation, but I wouldn't choose to like put on a George Michael album. But there's a couple of tracks. So when I watched his MTV Unplugged set, I thought it was absolutely flawless, and the song Amazing, I think, is absolutely brilliant. So there's a couple of tracks that I absolutely adore by him, and then obviously when you see him doing the Queen tribute and stuff like that, you can't ever ignore just how incredibly talented he was. But I could probably say safely I've never listened to him in 10 years.
Yeah. So I'm not a George Michael fan. I've never listened to a George Michael album. Having said that, in '92, when they did the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, I was all over that. I mean, Extreme, Metallica, they all played at that. That was the glory days where the biggest bands in the world were rock bands. It's like, you know, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses, like doing a song with Elton John. It was amazing. So George Michael was all over this, and he was undeniably the star of the show.
Yeah.
And it was kind of my first introduction to him. And I've got a little guilty pleasure that I do, which is to go down YouTube rabbit holes and find George Michael songs where he's singing live, because the guy is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there's this one which you should find where it's the rehearsals for the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, and they're all there. So like David Bowie's sat on a chair, and there's all these famous people in the room, and George Michael walks in just really nonchalantly, and and he just picks up the microphone, and the band start, and he hits this note, and this first note of a Queen song, and it is just like unbelievable. And it's like he's gone from like just like a guy just bumbling around to being like the greatest singer ever in a like click of your fingers. And I'll find it later and I'll send it to both of you. But it is so amazing, and he's so brilliant in the rehearsals and in the live show on that concert that it just completely transformed my view of him. I just never really thought about George Michael as an artist, because it did just sort of pass me by. But yeah, amazing.
So I think I know the video. I think that's where he kind of casually like hits a note, and he recommends to the producer that, you know, this feels more comfortable, or maybe I should do this instead, sort of thing. I think a lot of people, what they don't know about George Michael is that, you know, when he was in Wham, like he wrote all those songs, like he produced most of those songs, he wrote, he performed, he mixed, he did everything. I just loved him. So Faith came out in 1987. So I was 11 years old. So yeah, this is probably like the second record I ever bought, and it was bought off the back of being a fan of Wham, Freedom especially, and then also hearing the song Faith, and I just thought he looked cool. He had a very strong 80s look, you know. It was all about strong looks in the 80s. You know, he had the quiff, the stubble, the leather jacket, the acoustic guitar. I just thought he looked super cool. I think the song is amazing. And yeah, I remember I bought the tape. There's a song on the album which is a really good song called I Want Your Sex, and I bought the record because of Faith, and I remember playing the tape in the car with my mum, and this song coming on, you know, and the lyrics are like, I want your sex, do 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 do, and my mum was genuinely startled and took the tape out and told me I couldn't ever listen to this tape again. But obviously I did, and that made me want to listen to it more. Yeah, I love this song. I genuinely like Limp Bizkit's cover version of it as well. I think it's
that's brilliant.
One of the great take a song and do something different with it cover versions of all time. I even bought...
That's a future mixtape right there.
That's a future mixtape. I even bought a fake leather jacket when I was 12 years old to look a little bit like George Michael. And he's from Cyprus, and I used to live in Cyprus, so I just thought, well, we're basically the same person. So yeah, there we go. George Michael, Faith, an absolute mid-mixtape banger. And I do think, even though stylistically they're very different from The Offspring, really, Self-Esteem by The Offspring is a pop song. Like, it is a pop song. It's disguised as a punk song, and it's disguised as whatever, but it is a pop song. And I think these two fit incredibly well. 'Cause I gotta have faith. I gotta have faith. Because I got to have faith. I got to have faith. Baby, I know you're asking me to stay. Say please, please, please don't go away. You say I'm giving you the blues. Maybe you mean every word you say. I can't help but think of yesterday. But we're going to move on from pop, and we're going to move on to James, your next pick. Arguably one of the greatest bands of all time, I think, unquestionably so.
Yeah. Yes, and controversially, I would say this is their best album as well. So this is, and I've gone to quite some detail to work out what my opinion is on that, and this is their best album in my opinion. This is the song "Blackened" by Metallica, off "And Justice for All." So this is 1998, which was not the year I was listening to this, I might add. So there's a slight cheat here in that it was actually my younger brother Rob that had this. One of his friends had given him this album. And as in they bought him the tape and they'd given it to him, and we would listen to it at home. I'm going to guess that the year would have been probably 1991, maybe 3 or 4 years after this came out. And this is a big jump for me at this point. To go from Extreme and the Wild Arts and Therapy into 80s era Metallica is a massive jump, and I didn't know if I even really liked it. I think I thought it was a noise at first, and it really confused me. But this is in my top 10 albums of all time. I mean, this is a solid gold, absolute like next level of amazingness, really. And it also features my favorite. only geeks say these sort of sentences, but it features my favorite guitar solo of all time, which is also something I have thought about. And it is a hell of a guitar solo. And yeah, it's just prime Metallica, being progressive and heavy, but also super hooky and catchy as well. And I just love this song. I love this album. And yeah, it's their best.
So just before I get Mark's opinion, I would just like to know your top 3 in order Metallica albums then.
Wow, throw that at him.
And Justice for All.
Number 1.
Number 1, 10 out of 10. Master of Puppets, number 2, 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 is probably Ride the Lightning with a 9 out of 10. Yeah, number 3 I could have some other thoughts, but I think it's that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I think most Metallica fans would put Master or Justice as 1 or 2, maybe. So, Mark, a Metallica a band for you, or?
Yeah, I worry that this could open a can to become literally Metallica mixtape special, because the Black Album was the first album that I got on cassette from Woolworths, and it was because I was being taught Enter Sandman on the guitar. I'm literally talking today about all the guitar songs that anyone that works in a guitar shop would not want to hear. Like the ultimate, do not play Enter Sandman, do not play Smells Like Teen Spirit.
No.
Yeah, exactly. I've picked every single song. Like all I need to do now is pick Stairway to Heaven, and I'm banned from the podcast. But I fell in love with Metallica for that album, and I really don't want to get on the wrong side of you both, but I've never felt Metallica have given us much since then. Like Load's got a couple of great tracks that I enjoy. Reload I thought was rubbish. The latest like Death Magnetic and stuff, honestly I really struggle with. And the last album with that yellow cover, it just felt like one song for 30 minutes. And I know this is going to cause a bit of upset, and some listeners will be like, get Mark off the podcast. He needs to be hung alive. Like, do not let this guy ever go on a podcast ever again. But I just don't get it now with Metallica. I saw them at Download and they played 2 nights, and it was only the old stuff, like the stuff that James has just mentioned, that I was like, this sounds awesome. Lars is drumming now, and I'm not just trying to be, obvious, but the laziest drummer I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how he's still got a job in the band. I don't get it. So I'm sorry if James suddenly goes offline and I'm banned from all future festivals, but I just think now they're just a completely different band. They're doing it and going through the motions. When I watch them on stage, it doesn't feel as like real as it did. And, you know, watching the documentary Some Kind of Monster, I was like, yeah, that's the breaking point. You can see there's cracks, and they just never really kind of came back after Saint Anger. I was like, ugh.
I mean, how long do you want this podcast to be, Mark?
2 hours. Let's go for
it. There's a lot of opinions coming. There's a lot of opinions. So
if I'm wrong, it's great. But
I am a very big Metallica fan, and I would disagree. I really liked a lot of those records that you mentioned. I really liked genuinely really liked Death Magnetic. I thought Rick Rubin and Metallica together made something very interesting, like not a classic Metallica album at all. I even quite liked. This major controversy. I even quite liked their album with Lou Reed. I mean, like maybe is too strong a word, but I thought it was interesting. Look,
it was brave.
Yeah. Look, I think Blackened is exceptional. I think Justice for All is arguably the greatest metal record of all time. I think maybe what was the most interesting thing for a very young Matt, maybe the same for you, James, was this was a band playing very heavy music that maybe at first I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about or singing about lyrics wise. And I know James Hetfield has come out and said that he would just, lyrics were not really his thing. He just fucking write any old shit just to go over the riffs or whatever. But this was the first time I think I'd listened to music, and that was music that for me, for my generation, that was about corruption and about issues of freedom of speech and civil liberties and the environment. You know, like it was a really powerful moment, I think, Metallica, for a lot of people of our age and generation. I think that's kept them in our hearts kind of for a long way. Similar to you as well, right, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I really echo what you said about Death Magnetic. I think that is, and this is not always a popular opinion, but that's the best like post Black Album Metallica album.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the best album they've done since then, I think. I really like it. I put it above like Kill 'Em All, and you know, it's a really good album. I mean, they're a tough band. They're a tough band to love sometimes. They've been all over the place, and you know, if Load had been one album instead of two, it would have been really great. But it was a lot of filler on there. So I do agree with some of what Mark said, but I thought their double nighter at Download was amazing. I had such a lovely time.
Yeah.
Was that because of the beer? Was that the drink that made it everything that much better?
Well, I mean, it helps, doesn't it? Bangers and beer live is definitely.
That's all you need.
Yeah,
that's what Metallica are: bangers and beer. Yeah, look, I could talk a very long time about Metallica. We haven't even mentioned Master of Puppets, which is my personal favorite Metallica record and an album I think I've listened to genuinely 400 times, I would say. To begin with the dance of the dead, like it is the end. To begin with the dance of the dead, come on, blackened. Blistering of earth, terminating wood, deadly nicotine, kills a mind and being, callous frigid chill, nothing left to kill, never seen before, breathing nevermore. We're going to move on to your next pick, Mark, and another band, a very big band. Would you like to tell us the band and the title of the song?
Okay, so I truly believe, off the back of my comments about Metallica, this might redeem for some listeners out there that this band is one of the greatest British bands of all time. And that's a huge statement, but they are so underappreciated and so brilliant. And the songwriting, the musicianship, the anthems that this band write have lasted generations. And it's the incredible Manic Street Preachers. And I've gone with the track Faster from Holy Bible, but there's a story why I've chosen this track. So we talked earlier about how you discover new music, and we looked at stuff like MTV and Krang. And it wasn't a case of being able to listen to podcasts or have recommendations from Spotify. You had to do the work. But also I discovered a lot of good bands because of TFI Friday. And there was some great performances on there, and we had Chris Evans hosting this wild night that would always be really entertaining. But I'm 14 at the time, and I'm watching it, and I'm hearing this band come on, and it was from I'm trying to think what was the song they did. Oh, Design for Life. And I was like, God, this sounds epic. Like instantly, I was like, I'm singing it and singing it back, and I was like, this is so good. And I found out it was from Everything Must Go. So I was like, right, tomorrow, it's Saturday, I'm going to go to town. I'm 14, I'm going to get the album, I'm going to go to Woolworths. And I got there, and this is what was quite depressing and people don't appreciate. Albums would sell out, and it was a huge album. So you get to there, and they're like, I'm sorry, we haven't got any copies left. And you're like, what? Like, I want this album, I've got the money. And they're like, but we also have some of their other albums, and there's this one called Holy Bible. And I was like, like, do I wait a week and then have nothing to listen to? Or do I get it now and just get something with Manic Street Preachers on? So I bought the Holy Bible, went home, and genuinely, I know it sounds over the top, it changed my life. Like, one of the greatest albums ever. And then put this alongside Everything Must Go, which has stuff like Kevin Carter, Australia, absolute anthems, and a band that I've never ignored. So if they bring out an album tomorrow, I'll get it the day it comes out. It doesn't matter what it is. I think they are so good, such great songwriters. And is there really another band apart from obviously Radiohead and stuff and Blur and Oasis, but they're up there with those legends of the 90s where you're like, I thought they were untouchable.
So I'm gonna.
If you say now they're terrible, I'm gonna
go to James first before I give my opinions of this band. You are a big fan of Manic Street Preachers. I'm pretty sure we've spoken about this in the past, but you're a big fan.
I love the Manic Street Preachers. I absolutely love them. And actually, let's not forget they were a Brit rock band that moved away from Brit rock into a more indie sphere once Everything Must Go came out. And they did the thing that all these other bands we just talked about didn't do, and they did a different thing, but it was a more commercial thing. They didn't ruin their career. They took it to the next level of commercial success. But I was into the Manics on the album before this, Gold Against the Soul,
Oh,
and
amazing.
I also owned the debut. I'm not. I'm pretty sure I didn't have the debut when it was out, but before this album came out, I already owned the two before it, and I was obsessed with the Manics. Like I would like go on holiday with my parents and just spend the whole holiday like reading the Manics, sort of the inlay card and the lyrics, and just
Amazing.
the lyrics were quite hard to understand for a sort of 12, 13 year old. But I was totally obsessed with them, and when this album came out, I made my dad drive me to our local town of Burton-on-Trent to our price to buy this album. So I bought it on the day of release, and it was a real shock to the system because it's much darker than what had come
Yeah.
before it. It's quite like hateful and black in a lot of places, and it's but buried beneath it are these amazing pop songs. This is one of my favorite albums of all time, just to be clear. I mean, I absolutely adore this album. And it might come back to the weren't you 15 at the time thing? So because I was 15, so maybe it's just because I was 15, but I love this so much.
Is it? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, James, but is it a band that you could ever dream of putting at one of your festivals? Like, for me, I was talking on a previous episode. You may have heard me and Matt talking, but there's a couple of bands that I think should play 2000 Trees. So I always feel like in my heart, Feeder have to do a set at 2000 Trees. It just feels to me like all the bands like Ruben and Biffy are always tied up in the same category, and everyone has always got a soft spot from Feeder if you've come from that background. But surely, if you could ever, like, I know it might be budget or touring schedules and all this, but I could just imagine Mannix closing on a Saturday night and it being just like a greatest hits night. And fireworks are going off like Don Broco last year, and it's just the perfect end for you for that whole weekend.
Yeah, I mean, so I've never tried to book the Manics, right? So this is not a band that I've been after. And just to be clear, they've got a new album coming out. I think it's in about 2 weeks' time, and I'm
Yeah.
excited for it, right? So I go in on every single Manics album that comes out. They never quite hit my 2000 Trees radar because I don't really think rock fans listen to the Manic Street Preachers
No.
anymore. Like people of our age might do, but rock fans are not really interested. And in fact, their albums aren't really rock albums that much anymore. And So yes, I would 100% book them for trees, but somehow they've sort of like, unlike these other bands that have been around a long time, like Therapy, they
Yeah.
have the Manics haven't quite stayed in the same scene. They've just moved further and further into just a more commercial space of being a famous indie sort of band with big choruses. So don't know. I don't know what the audience would say. I think a lot of people would be like, "Who are these old men
Us
on
three
this
would be
stage?" I
happy. We'd
don't.
be like, right, tonight we're going to see Therapy, we're going to see the Wild Hearts, and then finishing the night is Manic Street Preachers. Us three are going to have the best time of our life.
It's almost like a new festival needs to be set up, doesn't it? It's like
Yeah.
90s fest. I'm
Um,
in.
so at this point, I'm going to come and say that I don't actually really care much for Manic Street Preachers. I don't think they're bad. I just never got on board with them, and I don't know if it's a timing thing. I don't know if I was into different things when Gold Against the Soul or whatever came out. I did like Everything Must Go in a sort of, it was there in the pub in the background sort of vibe, and I remembered going out. I remember I dated a girl when I was at college, and her like circle of friends were obsessed with the Holy Bible, and just a band that I just never got. I was never that keen on the vocals. I was never that. It didn't feel like a rock. I was into rock. I never felt like a rock band. I don't know. They just sort of sat oddly outside of my sort of sphere of interest. Yeah, I don't know why. It's just one of those bands, I think. So there.
Well, that makes up for my Metallica comment. I feel like we between us now, we've just pissed off all our fans, so that's good. Like James can ruin it for one of our next choices. That'd be great, just to finish it. So we've all pissed on each other's chips today.
I'm happy to do it on the next one.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to move on from one okay British rock band to an incredible British rock band. And my final choice for the mixtape is a band that I think this is maybe slightly cheating. I don't think I bought this record. I think I was given it by my dad, but I can't remember. So I'm going to put it in because it's an album and a band that I very much associate with a certain period of time of getting into guitar music, getting into guitars, and caring less about what the vocalist sounded like and more about guitars. And the band are Dire Straits, and the song I've gone for is Brothers in Arms, which is the title track of their quite big fifth studio album of the same name, Brothers in Arms, which was released in 1985. Dire Straits are a wonderful band. I don't care what anybody says. I think they're a proper good band. Brothers in Arms was that record that was huge. They toured the record for 2 or 3 years. They must have fucking hated every single chord, every single note of that record by the time they finished, because it was such a massive record worldwide. I think it's still in the top 10 biggest selling albums of all time in this country. Brothers in Arms is a really interesting song. It's the album closer. Love an album closer. It's an album closer that is an anti-war song. It was written about the Falklands, and I think it's a proper great song. I think it has an amazing guitar solo. I really love the video. It had like a rotoscope, kind of black and white animated sort of video at the time. Yeah, I love this song. I love this record, but I remember I went for a curry with my brother-in-law about 10 years ago. We have a thing every year called a Christmas curry. We go for a curry with him and some friends. And we went to this curry place in town in London, and they came over to us. We walked in and they had Walk of Life playing by Dire Straits on, which is a very fun song. And the guy serving said, "Look, the CD player's broken. So I'm asking all the customers if they're happy to have this one song on loop or no music at all." And we're like, "Oh, we'll definitely listen to this song on loop. That's never going to get boring. I can listen to this song forever." genuinely, after half an hour, it was too much. It was too much. Dire Straits, talk to me, James. They're a band that you give any flying monkeys about?
Well, isn't Walk of Life the
Woohoo! Yeah,
That's going to get annoying after a while. So I've never listened to Dire Straits. Weirdly, my only thing with Dire Straits is I've been in two bands. One was a covers band that played Walk of Life at like parties and weddings and things, and the other one was a rock band that one of the guys really loved Brothers in Arms, and we did a terrible cover of. But I've never. They're a strange band, aren't they? In that, are they? I always like to know whether a band's rock or not. That's like my important thing. And it's like, are they a rock band? And they've never really been embraced by the rock scene or the rock. Do you know what I mean? You know, like Led Zeppelin and Kiss and just the sort of history of rock music. And no, I don't know if anyone really in our rock world, the rock world that we inhabit now, anyone really talks about Dire Straits, and maybe that's unfair, or maybe they're not a rock band. I don't know.
I think they're rock. I think maybe blues rock. It's that sort of late 70s. I mean, their first single, I think, was Sultans of Swing, which is a brilliant song. Again, has a wonderful, very clean guitar solo, and it feels more, I guess, similar to the Police, that sort of jazz and blues with rock in it. And they obviously did rock songs, but I think maybe because I think their sensibilities originally were blues, and then obviously in the 80s with production and these kind of musicians, these artists, these bands were excited about the kind of technological advancements of studios and recording, and with all of that come the desire to throw in keyboards and beautiful production, and I think that kind of led to them making a record with very big songs that made them very, very big. I think they're a really interesting band. I think they've written some incredible albums. I think Romeo and Juliet, I think, is a 10 out of 10 song, beautifully covered by The Killers, a band I don't really care for, but I think they did a cover version and it really kind of showed off how wonderful that song is. Are you aware of Dire Straits, Mark?
Yeah, they're all right.
God, here we go.
They're like, no, they're just like growing up. They're like just this like dad rock. Like you could put them with like Toto or Supertramp. Like I didn't think that they were worthy of the hype. You know, there's these certain bands, Pink Floyd, you listen to and you're like, yeah, they're fucking incredible. Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and you're like, you can't ignore just how great they are. But Dire Straits, they're always that band like, I had a lot of problems with my kidneys over the last couple of years and was in hospital all the time having operations. And whenever I was waiting, it was always the music that was in the reception. There was always Dire Straits on. So I just associate them as this band that you just put on as background music. And, you know, if you're going for an Indian and you're having a nice meal, they're just putting it on as background music. It doesn't feel like it's got a purpose. It's all right. It's harmless. They got a few good tunes, but nah.
See, I think they're wonderful. I think they're wonderful, and I think because Mark Knopfler's vocal is sort of, I'm not a cool kid. I didn't get into Bob Dylan until I was in my 20s. Like, I like Bob Dylan a lot now, but I didn't get into him until I was in my 20s. And it was vocalists like Jimi Hendrix and Mark Knopfler that sort of, I'm not going to say they can't really sing, but the vocal was the least important part of what they did. Even though they were the vocalists, it was less important to them than the guitar and the sort of structure of the song and the kind of sound of the song. And if it wasn't for Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits, I don't think my ears would have been tuned to kind of being able to appreciate Dylan, and that's those kind of other artists that were less about having a beautiful vocal and harmonies and stuff. But yeah, Dire Straits, and this is a great song. I don't care what anybody says. This is a great song.
It's a great song. I'm never going to go against that. I will never listen to it.
There's so many different worlds, so many different songs, and we have just one world, but we live in different worlds.
We're going to go with our final track of the mixtape, and it is Back to You, James, to see us home. And you've gone for another Brit rock classic.
Yeah, it's It's the song New Policy One by Terrorvision off their debut album Formaldehyde.
Wow.
Another absolute gateway band. I actually own this song on 7-inch single, like it's bright green, like horrible garish green 7-inch, which I'd imagine might be worth some money nowadays. I don't know, but look, I think Terrorvision are a massively underrated band. That their first three albums are untouchably brilliant. But the first two albums are particularly incredible. They did exactly what the Offspring did, in that they hit on a hit formula, which came on their second album. They did the song Oblivion, the doo-wop song, and then they had another sort of novelty single with the song Tequila. And
Yeah.
once they'd got those two songs, it was a bit like, right, let's write. And they had the Whales and Dolphins song. It's like every album had to have a sort of novelty hit element to it, which is such a shame because there was such a brilliant band, such great pop rock songwriters. This song I absolutely love, but the reason I put this in is because it I literally was the first Terrorvision song I ever heard, and I bought it on 7-inch in my local record shop. And I loved everything they did from then on for the first few albums, and it is that they were one of those bands. They exploded. I saw them on the main stage at Reading, like third from top, I think. They were really about to properly be the biggest rock band in the UK, and then it all just went a bit wrong. But I feel like no one people look back at Therapy, or they look back at the Wild Arts, or they look back at the Manics, and they go, "Wow, well, those bands were amazing." You don't really hear that on television, and I feel that that is really unfair because these first two albums are incredible.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely incredible band, and it had a huge influence on me. And the song, even though you've picked like those songs that are the singles and like Oblivion and Perseverance and stuff, those songs are anthems. And if you're ever in a 90s club and it's a club night, stick one of them on. Honestly, people go crazy. And I remember being at school at 13, and we had a like a battle of the bands where you just, everyone's just doing bloody Nirvana covers, and we came on and we played Oblivion, and people went crazy. And I have such good memories of just How to Make Friends and Influence People is one of the most underrated albums ever. Like, genuinely, people just like, yeah, Terrorvision are pretty good. I like that Tequila song. That's quite funny. And it's like, no, they're more than that. And I just looking now, they're on 40,000 listeners a month. Like, that depresses me. I feel like they should
yeah.
be up there with the likes of the bands we've mentioned today. And like Alice, What's the Matter? Pretend Best Friend. Anthem after anthem.
I do. I think the point you raised, James, is the point, and I think that's they stuck with this notion of making a joke, in quote unquote joke song, and those were the singles, and those were the massive songs. And I think if you do that, that is going to give your kind of longevity, your kind of lifespan of as a band, a kind of limit, because people will move on. They will get annoyed, and they'll put you in that pigeonhole. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, How to Make Friends and Influence People is one of my, like with Therapy and Trouble Gum, I think it's my favorite Brit rock album from the 90s. Like, I know from Alice, What's the Matter, all the way to the weird hidden track at the end of the thing after What Makes You Tick. I just love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And Gil Norton, who I think mixed some of the singles off the debut record, produced this, and I mean, it just sounds gorgeous as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful album. Yeah, and obviously we're not talking about this one, but New Policy One is a total banger as well, and a lovely way to end the mixtape.
Are they still going now? Are they? Can I go and see them?
Yeah, they just had an album out last year, which I thought was quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they're around. Tony Wright played in the Forest at a solo set of Trees a few years back. And they're another band like the Manics, where I'd kind of like to book them for Trees as it's just a selfish booking, but I don't know if the 2000 Trees audience cares or not, really.
I can imagine them in the Cave stage at like tea time on a Saturday.
Yeah. Or daytime on main stage, daytime would be pretty cool, I think, as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, playing the hits, please.
Yeah.
That'd be lovely. Well, there we go. There is our Me and My Mixtape journey through our songs from the first albums we bought with James Scarlett. This has been the final episode of season 1. Thank you everybody for listening so far. We will be back sooner than later, I'm pretty sure. Who knows how long, but it's not going to be very long, is it, Mark?
No, because we've already started recording season 2.
Because we've already started recording season 2.
Yes.
But until then, the only thing that's left to say is thank you so much to James Scarlett. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your songs and albums for the mixtape. My pleasure. Thanks for making me your first ever guest. I feel very touched by that. So yeah, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it. I love chatting about music. Love chatting about Extreme.
I now want James every week. I'm like, can we have James next time for series 2? Because I like the dynamic of 3. It's a bit better.
Yes, lovely. Well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone. We will see you soon.